consumers, things have really changed over like last 6 7 months. So as per the recent IBF report, India retail market is one of the fastest growing market in the world. It is expected to reach about $1.1 trillion in 2020. And as I mentioned, it accounts for 10% of the GDP and contributing about 8% of the employment in the country. Also, India is the fifth largest global destination in the retail space. If I look at FDI confidence index, India is ranked about 16th after countries like US, Canada, Germany, UK, and if you talk about Asia, like it's Japan and China. So, in terms of some of the growth numbers for the retail industry, the retail industry in India in 2018 was about $950 billion and growing at a CAGR of about 13%, and it is expected to reach $1.1 trillion in 2020. If we look at, we segregate the market between online, offline. So online retail sales were forecasted to grow at 31% year on year, and it was about $33 billion in 2018. And it's almost like expected to double, might be like much, maybe a notch higher now, considering the pandemic and people are like ordering mostly like online. So revenue were expected to be about $60 billion in 2020. So revenue for India's offline retailer, also known as brick and mortar retailers, is expected to increase by rupees almost like 10,000 to 12,000 crores in the financial year 2021. And India is also expected to become the world's fastest growing e-commerce market, driven by robust investment in the sector and rapid increase in the number of internet users. So various agencies have high expectations about the growth for India e-commerce market. So if we look at the investment scenario in India, the Indian retail trading has received a cumulative FDI totaling to about $2.1 billion over like last 20 years. So that's if we talk about from a period from April 20 till March 2020. And this is as per the government report from DPIIT. With the rising need for consumer goods in different sectors, including consumer electronics and home appliances, many companies have invested in the Indian retail space in the past, maybe over a period of like 1 year to 1.5 years. And India retail sector attracted about $970 million from various private equity funds in 2019. So government is also like backing up this sector, and there are like a lot of initiatives from the government. In If you look at maybe some of the key highlights there, so government of India has allowed 100% FDI in online retail of goods and services through the automatic route. So thereby providing clarity on the existing businesses of e-commerce companies operating in India. The government may also change FDI rules in food processing in a bid to permit e-commerce companies and foreign retailers to sell made in India consumer products. So, as I was talking earlier, the retail sector in India, specifically during the lockdown and pandemic time, has almost like thousands of crores. Initially, like during those 3 months. So, according to a CAIT report, the Indian retail trade has suffered business losses to the tune of about 15.5 trillion rupees in the initial 3 months. So, owing to the lockdown, most stores, except stores selling like essential items and then groceries or pharmacies, have reported like 80% to 100% reduction in sales. As 85% of the retail costs are fixed costs, which has also put like severe financial pressures on the retailers. Additionally, the industry is also experiencing severe liquidity challenges, which could also lead to like large scale unemployment. The cash flow of the industry was like an issue, but I think things are coming back to somewhat normal. And as per the survey conducted by Retailers Association of India, which was a mix of both food and non-food retailers, 70% of the retailers now expect business recovery to happen in less than 6 months, and approximately 20% expect like it would take like maybe closer to a year. So talking about maybe the recent surveys from Retailer Association of India, as I said, like the fixed cost for retail is there, and which is putting severe financial pressures on the industry. There would be a manpower rationalization which might happening in the retail sector. So smaller retailers are expecting to lay off about 30% of their manpower going forward. The number looks at about like 12% when we talk about medium-sized retailers, and 5% for large retailers. On the whole, the retailers who responded for this survey expect to lay off about 20% of their manpower. So now coming back to what has been the impact of digitization on the sector. The COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated greater acceptance of cashless payments, and many consumers switch to digital, and in many cases like contactless transactions. So I was last week on a forum, and one of the CEO for Shopper Stop was there, and he mentioned that the amount of digitization which has happened in maybe last 6 months, people were like maybe looking forward to do that in maybe next 10 years. So that's the amount of digitization which has been happening. Retailers and makers of fast moving consumer goods. So it's not only like the retailers, also the industry is kind of supporting them, who were like struck by COVID-19 lockdown, were actually like forced to relook at the ways they reach the consumers. Since then, several consumer good companies, even if I talk about Bosch and Lomb, we've been out with an app where all the retailers are now required to necessarily order through that app, without which we're not accepting any orders coming in. So since then, several consumer good companies have identified clear trends and chased those, including like heightened uses of hygiene products and expanding their reach to shoppers on e-commerce.
एबीपी न्यूज आपको रखे आगे।
This is not, by no means a death knell for the offline business in retail, because customers are coming back, and we can see that people are coming back to the high streets more than they are probably coming to malls. But even malls also over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks before Diwali has really started getting traffic back. So people are going back to retail stores in high streets and in malls, because obviously we all have been indoors that long, and now the real mental impact on the minds of all of us as consumers of having stayed indoors has been a lot. And hence now people are, with their own ways of securing themselves and taking precautions, people are stepping out. So I would say that it is not clearly a death knell for of offline retail, but on the contrary, I see the transformation that offline retail is going through, where they are adopting where digital ways to entwine that with an offline experience. I think that in the retail space is very, very interesting.
Right. Abhishek, we're all aware of the rise of the digital that can be seen across spectrum right now. But on ground, has the rise in digital consumption and digital sales led to an incremental digital buyers which were not available prior to the pandemic? Or is it the same audience but just more in numbers? So essentially, has the growth in digital created new audiences for you?
Absolutely. I mean, there is no denying that. Our own .com business, which is our own website, Puma.com, has grown more than 3 times in
Right.
Q3 over last year's Q3. And we are seeing a lot of new users coming to the fold. It is not just the existing users buying more online. It is also the net, the customer net or the user net is enhancing. And I can tell you from our partnership with the marketplaces, whether it is the Flipkart or the Amazons or the Mintras or the Ajios of the world, they're continuously acquiring new users who have never bought online. And it's very interesting because we've also seen that a lot of people during the lockdown got into some of these marketplaces to buy essential products, and then they got used to it, and they started now getting comfortable with e-commerce, and then have now started buying non-essentials also online. So, I mean, there are numerous examples, even people who are senior citizens who would have probably never ever previously thought of buying online or paying through a UPI, are now adopting that, because even for all age groups, not just the young consumers, but I see this across age groups, including senior citizens. A lot of people are now getting digital, so that's very, very real. And I would say that because the adoption has a level of stickiness factor, that if you get used to something, used to an environment, used to doing things, then you get comfortable. And then you realize the convenience beyond just the needs during the pandemic. And hence, we would like to believe that this is going to really outlast the pandemic for sure.
Awesome. This actually brings me to my next question, and I'm really intrigued to know what, according to you, works better. Does it a pure play platform like Amazon or Flipkart work better, or having your own branded e-commerce presence is better? Should it be both, or would that be an overkill? What do you think?
Look, we are a multi-channel brand. We are the largest sports brand in India with a lot of users, and we are acquiring a lot of users. So it's very important for us to be available where our consumers are. And I think we have, on e-commerce side, we have both sets of audience profiles, right? I mean, there are those extremely loyal, Puma consumers who would come to Puma.com because they know that's the brand's platform. They can get the best experience. They can know more about the brand, discover more about the brand, engage with the brand. It's also one of the most wide catalogs available for us, and hence will come. And then there are people who would be on marketplaces who would also cross transact. They are buying one category and they would then get interested in some other category, or they are specifically wanting also to compare. So let's say that you want to buy a running shoe and you're not very sure whether you want to buy Puma or any other brand, and then you come to a Myntra and then you do a search. So there are both types of audiences, and I think it's very important for us to have a very strong strategy, both from a presentation perspective, from a marketing engagement perspective for marketplaces as well as for our .com. For us, our own website is extremely important, as you can understand, and we are focusing a lot. I would like to believe that we have focused a lot on that, and if you go to the site, you will realize that it's probably one of the fastest mono-brand fashion platforms. And it is important because at the end of it, we believe that we are a cult brand, and hence it has got a strong loyalty and following. And very important for us, hence, to get this piece on point. So, yeah, I mean, both are important, and we will continue like we have always done, even before pandemic. We will always focus extensively on e-commerce.
Very well put, Abhishek. I would want to know, as a natural consequence of the pandemic, the fashion and apparel industry did see a dried up in-store footfall. However, a large part of the shift was on the online channels as well. What can retail brands do to make up for the lost revenues, and what kind of challenges did you actually face, and the initiatives that you rolled out?
Well, again, it's a very broad question, Soumya, but the way I would answer it is that there is no one size fit all. So I can't today say, here is the magic wand, go e-commerce and your brand sales will shoot up and go through the roof, and you will, counterbalance the loss in the offline space. I think one needs to have a strategy also for offline. I mean, like I can see that even in our bricks and mortar stores, we are getting traffic back. The customer there has a certain set of expectation, safety being of prime importance. They're now, a brand's trust is built on how they are behaving themselves, or what kind of operating procedures they do have on health and hygiene and safety. And in e-commerce, I think it is about, we started the journey before, and it's about focusing more and enhancing customer convenience, right? I would also see an in-between strategy where our stores are going hyper-locally digital, which means that today, if you live in a particular area and then there is a Puma store there, and you are a customer or you are a target customer, then the store needs to find ways to outreach you through digital ways, even if you might not want to come. I'll give you an example. Let's say you live in Delhi, right?
Right.
Okay, so let's say a Gurgaon store, let's say MGF Metropolitan Mall, and there is a Puma store there, and you live in an apartment complex next door, and then one Monday evening you decided to buy a Puma top, and you didn't want to go to the store, so you can reach out to the store, and the store will curate a catalog personalized for you and send it out to you, and then you can pay digitally and the store will deliver within 4 hours. So,
Right.
It's a complete digital transaction, but it is very conversational. It's very personalized. So all of these would be, I would say, the disruptions which are emerging out now, which I think, again, the benefits of which will last beyond, the pandemic.
एबीपी न्यूज आपको रखे आगे।
So as you understand, the nature of the play that exists today on platforms like Amazon, Flipkart, etc., is the fact that being marketplaces, the idea here is to basically get your brand to be discovered over your competitor. Okay, so obviously there is a very, very clear need for you to basically be able to drive and try to get your brand every time your customer searches for your product on these platforms. So in that sense, it's extremely critical that you have your bottom of the funnel strategy clearly sorted out as far as your play on these platforms go. So whether it be in terms of investing in the right set of keywords, or whether it be in terms of basically having your content discovered by the customer, or at the same time also ensuring that your product or your brand has the right set of ratings or reviews, right, which are in a way going to basically influence the customer decision towards basically buying your brand or your product. These are all very, very critical parameters on which your success of your brand is determined on that particular platform. And to that extent, and at the same time, not only that, it's also extremely important that you need to also be relevant, because you might have everything, but if you're probably not priced appropriately, and if your competitor is, then obviously you might still miss the bus. So there are a plethora of these kind of areas that brands need to be thinking about and trying to figure out how exactly can I make myself discoverable while at the same time continue to be relevant to my audience, which basically is shopping for my product on the platform. So for marketers, it becomes extremely important for them to be heavily invested in performance marketing, because it is directly going to be linked to your ROI. Okay, at the end of the day, because if you don't have your content which is optimized, if you don't have your keywords that are optimized, if you don't have, if you're not discoverable enough, obviously it's very unlikely that your product is basically going to sell. So obviously that is basically going to be the key aspect that brands need to be taking into consideration. So at the same time, what is also important is the fact that each of these marketplaces have their own specific set of audiences. Okay, so the audience that buys on Amazon is not the same audience that buys on Big Basket, versus the audience that buys on Big Basket is not the same audience that buys on Grofers or probably on Flipkart. So it's extremely important for brands to have that understanding of who is the audience, okay, who is shopping for their products on their platforms, and then try to basically position their offerings appropriate to that particular platform. So to that extent, there is a clear need for marketeers, okay, to clearly understand the value proposition that is being offered by each of these platforms, and then try to customize their offering and their proposition to their customers on those specific platforms. Right? The brands that have been effectively able to do that have been the ones that have actually won. And brands that haven't been able to do that, despite being, like I said, despite being a very popular brand name, as we have found, those brands still continuing to struggle, especially in terms of driving their play on those specific platforms.
Perfect. Mr. Buddha, tell me, as we go back and forth in this pandemic from opening, unlock to now again a second lockdown or whatever, tell me, how would the offline and online behave and come together as we move along?
So irrespective of now, so it's been such a journey that now most of us are actually sort of better prepared for a lockdown or just, I would say, the new normal, for that matter. So I think this will continue for a while. So moving forward, we are like I said, so the overall approach remains the same. We are trying to leverage every channel that is available. So if consumers want to buy from online, so we are leveraging enough and more to ensure that our products are easily available online across e-commerce platform. As it is, we have for decades together, we have continued to leverage and consolidate our general trade platform. Those efforts would continue, and we sort of, in many markets, we need to penetrate well. We need to reach the smallest pop strata, said down south, where we are sort of, that's an area of improvement for us. Maybe eastern markets are yet other area of improvement for us. So those efforts continue to be there, and it's not easy to reaching these places. They are really remote and not very well connected places. So those challenges of reaching such far and far off locations remain. We try to leverage every platform that's available, offline, online. So like I said, modern trade, within modern trade, we would say, like B2B platform is yet another complementing. Yet there is a very very fine divide between a B2B and because it has a direct conflict with my existing channel, with my existing distribution, because so a B2B channel sort of tries to fill up the gap, but at the same time it also tries to cater to the markets which are already being catered by my distributor. So there is a direct conflict, and there could be a conflict in terms of price. So a B2B channel might be giving a better price, and my distributor gets angst, upset, and says, "Oh, somebody is actually catering to my market at a much lower price," and things like that. So you need to ensure that you need to really be maintain discipline to ensure that the pricing, the market discipline, the market hygiene parameters remain intact, and B2B as a channel complements our business further. And that's how we are looking at moving forward. So irrespective of it, even if it's a lockdown, e-commerce is definitely going to help us in a long way.
Perfect. So I have 5 minutes left, and I have to go to 3 panelists more. So my quick question to you, Ms. Kishore, is that there's still an argument on whether even the large brands are able to deliver seamless omni-channel experiences. Tell me, what is your take on whether this will change as newer players come online? Will this change?
See, I think it is about delivering the promise of the supply chain behind online, because I think getting online is not a big deal these days. And the semblance is very much how the offline world operates. So, for example, a parlay typically does not have a parlay store offline. They collaborate with a supermarket to sell, and in similar fashion, probably Mr. Buddha will be placing his products with a Flipkart, an Amazon, or a Gopher, or a Milk Basket. It is about, does parlay meet the, and I'm sorry I'm taking your example here, but does parlay meet the promise behind the supply chain to deliver what has been asked for in terms of quality and in terms of timeliness and in terms of quantity? So the typical OTIP standard, if you're able to meet or not. Will the brands be able to meet? I definitely think they will be able to meet that channel. Not everybody has to reinvent the wheel, even for performance marketing so much, because there are players who are already specializing in that. It's about getting onto that bandwagon and managing the supply chain behind it in the right and seamless manner.
Perfect. Mr. Sriram, tell me, what does omni-channel mean for your brand right now?
So as I said, 95 odd % of our business is already, absolute offline, while online has been growing. I've never thought in the last couple of months that we should ever have our own e-commerce website or our own app, because we are strongly present on the top 4 or 5, horizontal marketplaces. I think the current focus for us is that we want to focus more and more on reaching out to first-time users, because e-commerce therefore becomes an immediate opportunity. But is there a digital way as such way forward for our category, for our brand? I think the chances are very slim, because we are more a neighborhood product, we are more a neighborhood brand, a neighborhood category, so to say. And India has got 12-13 million odd Kirana stores, so it means that it's just easy for people to pick up a Levista coffee or a Parley product at the store nearest to your house or your office. So while we will definitely have an online presence, I do not see a big merger happening with offline and online for our category as such, and our brand specifically.
Perfect. Mr. Iyer, I want to come to you. There was an argument that brands only spoke omni-channel but failed to actually deliver. Does this change now, in your view?
Well, I think the aspect of omni-channel needs to be looked at from 2 contexts, right? So one is from the customer context, and one from a channel context. So many a times what we do is we basically look at it only purely from a channel lens, but don't look at from a customer lens. The idea today is for you to really look at your customer and look at the customer behavior in the nature of how your customer shops for your product. Gone are the days where you could, as a brand, decide or dictate the terms to a customer and say that my product is available only in this particular channel and you better well buy from here. And that was pretty much the option left. But today, that's not true anymore, right? The customer decides from where he wants to get your product. And at the end of the day, it's extremely important for the brand to be there as present in that particular touch point from where the customer wants to be there. So to that extent, and to the point that Sriram was also making, so what we are also clearly seeing is there are 2 sets of brands. One is brands that are driven around transactions, whereas there are brands which are driven around experiences. Okay, so when we see, if you're a transaction focused brand, the focus for you is to basically drive the cost to serve or bring down your overall cost to serve. So the focus for those brands is basically to try and look at the most cost-effective channel to get my product to direct to the customer in the lowest possible cost. Whereas there is this other aspect which is primarily driven around experience. Now, if you're talking about a brand like Nike, or you're talking about a brand like Reebok, or any of the apparel brands or the fashion brands, etc., it is primarily more driven around the experience. Okay, so the brand typically at that level is definitely wanting to woo you across all the various touch points, whether it be your retail store, whether it be your brand's own website, whether it be on horizontal platforms like Amazon, Flipkart, Myntra, Jabong, etc., or whether it be any other new age channel. It could be a video-based, WhatsApp-based, chatbot-based, AI-based kind of platforms through which you would basically drive engagement with your customers. So it's extremely important, given the nature and the type of brand and the type of category and the type of consumer or the type of audience that you're going with, you need to really look at it purely from that particular lens and try to see how exactly is your brand indexed across all these various touch points. So to that extent, I think we still have channels are something I think most brands have still got it. Okay, I think a lot of fashion, lifestyle, apparel brands, footwear brands have still been able to drive through omni-channel in that sense by trying to basically link offline with online and trying to drive fulfillment from store and those specific kinds of models. Where I think there is still a long journey out there is basically to try and build that single view of the customer. Okay, so the aspect of basically looking at your customer data, understanding and basically trying to figure out how your customer interacted across these various touch points. Okay, and what are the kind of activities that he does at each of these touch points. Suppose he browses on one channel, he basically and he buys on another channel. Is the brand today in a position able to clearly understand the customer's part to purchase and try to basically drive meaningful engagement across all the various points in the part to purchase? I think that is exactly at the heart of what true omni-channel is. I think that is basically where we see a lot of brands still having a long way to go. And in our experience, I think that is exactly the holy grail. Once brands you truly understand how brands can basically engage with customers across the part to purchase, I think that is exactly when the brand would have truly nailed on omni-channel.